Hey everybody, this is Perch. Are we all getting too negative here? Getting a little bit too negative. Well, here's the intervention from a viewer. It says, Perch, you've got us down in the dumps lately. Please consider the following video ideas. Number one, what is currently working well? Positive things about the comic industry. Things to look forward to in 2023 in the comics industry. Anything else positive? Basically, positivity is what we're looking for. You're really making me reconsider life itself lately. Sarcasm, but true. Jesus. Thanks for all you do, which really isn't that much. Cheers from Seattle. Well, there's part of your problem. We're entering into the depression time of the year in Seattle, so that's always tougher. And Seattle's definitely taken a beating over the last 2 years for sure. Just there was once a time, man. Back in the '90s, you would walk around. I would walk around Seattle, like the downtown area. It was vibrant, tons of life. It was almost that quintessential kind of you know, uh, port market. You had people just selling stuff, very friendly. It's unpleasant to walk around downtown Seattle now. It's not good. But I'm not doing much to help with the old positivity here. So let's take a crack at that. Well, first off, what are things? What is currently working well? Positive things about the comic industry. Well, the biggest one, the one that immediately jumps to mind, and it is a huge deal. And particularly if you take the long view, if you've been looking and collecting comics since the '80s, the '70s, if you remember the kind of the UK indie scene, a lot of the US indie scene, there's one kind of truth about comics that is wonderful today. It is easier than it has ever been before. You have many different routes to get your idea into a comic book and out into market in people's hands. Anyone can now do it. Anyone. That did not used to be the case. Printing, shipping, marketing, advertising, all those things were just overly complicated. Now we have a wealth of options in order to get our comics printed. We can go online only. We can do digital. We can. There's many companies now that have specific printing prices and templates and other things for comics. We've done so many of them. There's a ton of different routes. You can do things domestically, you can do things overseas, and in terms of fundraising, you can crowdfund it. You've got multiple options in which to do that. You can do it yourself, via your own website if you have enough notoriety, or you can you're willing to put the muscle in marketing it. You can promote in social media, in videos, at cons. It's easier than ever to actually get into a con and promote there. I know we hear stories about this con or that con that's like barring Frank Miller because he's too conservative or whatever. Well, this kind of stuff. But that is the abnormality. It's not how the vast majority of cons work. Any intelligent one would kill themselves to get Frank Miller as a guest in their convention. They know that's a pretty significant draw. So only the schmucks would do something else. There's a couple, but not many. By and large, if you have a comic idea, in the past you'd have to convince somebody else that they needed to help you kind of produce your idea. Now you still need to produce people to buy it, but that's it. You can do almost everything else yourself. There's a lot of people out there who are willing to do work for free. There's some who the prices are lower than they used to be. There's a lot of writers and artists. This is kind of a double-edged sword thing. It's a bad thing for the creators, but if you have an idea for a comic, you can get pretty good, talented, creative work on it. Inking, penciling, coloring, lettering. You could get it cheaper than it's been for a while. And there are a lot of companies out there. Many companies will publish your book. Now, if you're looking at the very traditional, go through diamond kind of way to publish comics, then certainly there's a click. There's a general kind of mass mentality there around a bunch of how it works. But the reality is, almost anyone, I think pretty much anyone can get their comic printed somewhere. Now, it is highly possible to do that. Again, you may not have it. You may not be able to print it where you want. Like if your dream is to get your comic printed by Marvel, that's that is probably very elusive, hard to do. But if you just want to take your idea and put some talent on it and get it printed or go digital and get it out into the world and get people reading it, there's nothing stopping you now. That's a huge positive. And it may seem like not a big deal today. That may, I think a lot. I've mentioned this before, and people kind of hand wave it away. But even 10 years ago, it was dramatically harder. And 20 to 30 years ago, it was almost impossible. Certainly at the fidelity you could do it today. Yeah, it was always possible for you to get your comic and kind of get a bootleg printer or somebody small to print it up. I knew a guy who made indie comics for the cons up in Seattle and used Kinko's, if you remember that business, to actually print the copies, do the stapling themselves and everything else. And it was a labor of love, but it did not look like a professional comic. It just didn't. And now you can make your comic look as good or better than the big two with a reasonable budget. So that's a huge positive. There are other things too, but I mean that's a massive one that I think more people need to take stock of because with all the complaining and all the negativity, one of the things that is true now is it's almost put up or shut up time. You can do your comic. You know, it's a danger if kind of your brand is complaining. You put out your comic, then people are going to complain about your comic, and we're going to quickly see your skills. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with saying I feel entitled to complain about this book that I'm being asked to spend money for, but I'm not a comic creator, so I'm not going to put out my own book. I'm a consumer. That's fair too. But anyway, there you go. The second item on your look, what's something I'm looking forward to in 2023? Well, I've heard a lot of ideas from a number of different creators in the last 6 months, and I do keep I keep my confidentiality. I keep my secrets. So I've been asked, in many cases, to keep these ideas quiet. I will tell you, there's a lot of really good ideas in 2023 that, if the creators are able to do it, they'll be amazing reads. Stuff for the big two, stuff for indies. There's some ideas out there that I think are great that would breathe some enthusiasm and some life and some new thoughts into comics. Now, by the way, the trick always is that it's one thing to have a great idea. A lot of ideas are great, and then they kind of get whittled down and to some extent destroyed by the time they actually get through the editorial and out the other end into press. Those great ideas often diminish. But I do think that I've heard a lot of things to look positive over. I'll give one more that's also kind of and this will seem like a backhanded compliment. I do think, as you've heard in other videos, the events are worthless and getting more and more worthless. But one of the side effects for that is because of the focus of the publishers on the events, you are seeing writers and artists, you're seeing creative teams being able to do kind of more of their own idea in their own little corner. And I think that's how books like Moon Knight has allowed to kind of flourish. It's been allowed to kind of do its thing. It's not getting sucked into any events. It's not getting kind of this this big spotlight put on it, and a lot of it feels like that book is being allowed to be what it is. And I think that's a pretty big positive too. So I mean, I think that there's a few elements in here that are that speak to an industry that hopefully should continue to grow, evolve, allow people to do the work they've always wanted to do. A lot of good stuff. Oh, here comes a police car. I'm always curious how much of the background noise shows up in the video, and I never really go in and check. But there he goes. He's off chasing somebody. Most likely a liberal, because it's Texas. Anyway, so there's a lot of things to look forward to. It's easy to be negative. It's certainly easy to be frustrated and depressed, especially at the treatment of some of the creators that's going on right now. How all that's working, the kind of continual cycle of the same old things over and over again. There's plenty of problems, and there's always going to be plenty of problems. But there are also plenty of people who have great ideas, who are just ready to be turned loose and and explore solutions to these problems. And there are good solutions to these problems. You just need a little bit of work to get there. Anyway, thank you very much for the mail. Thanks for hanging out there. Good luck in Seattle. I miss Seattle, but the Seattle, having moved away from it, I mean, Texas is not going to be where my heart is by any stretch of imagination. This isn't for me. But I miss Seattle, but the Seattle that I miss is not the Seattle that exists. The Seattle I miss is 25 years in the past, and I don't miss that place either. So where does old Perch go with his intrepid family? That's a good question, and we'll open to suggestions. Hey, if you have some positive things about the industry you want to share, throw them in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.